When we're multiplying real numbers, sometimes we use an X for multiplication. Sometimes we use a star for multiplication. Sometimes we multiply A times B by using parentheses and no other symbol in between there. Or sometimes we use a dot in between. When we're multiplying real numbers, some important words include factor and product. So if I take a factor times a factor, I get a product, and the product is the answer to a multiplication problem. For a division problem, one way is to use a division symbol. How cute. Another way is to use a slash, like A divided by B, or you could write it as a fraction. Fractions mean the same thing as far as like number crunching wise. They mean the same thing as dividing. So as far as vocab for division, the answer to a division problem is called a quotient. And for some other words, we're going to take the dividend, which is the number you start with, divide it by the divisor, which is the number you divide by, and that is going to equal the quotient. All right, so now that we've got some vocabulary established, let's start. Oh, look, it's all one thing. It's so much easier than adding and subtracting. The rules are the same the whole time. So let's go through the rules first, and then we'll work our way through the examples after that. So if we multiply or divide two numbers that have the same signs, our answer will be positive. And if we multiply or divide two numbers that have different signs, our answers will be negative. So yes, that's true. If I start with two negative numbers and I'm multiplying or dividing, my answer will still be positive. So let's practice by mapping this out below. So judging by these rules that I've established on top, if I do a positive times or divided by a positive, those signs are the same. So my answer is positive. If I do a positive times a negative, what? Those signs are different. So that is going to elicit a negative number. All right. Ooh, negative times a positive, or negative divided by a positive. Those are different once again. That's going to give me a negative number. All right. And then last but not least, this is the weird one. We've got a negative times or divided by a negative, even though they're both negative. They're the same, and therefore my product or quotient would be positive. So let's use this strategy to answer the problems on each of these flaps. And this is a great time if you're like, I got this, Mrs. Nichols, pause the video, do the problems on your own, and then come back to check. If you're like, what? Then just keep watching. All right, so here's what we're going to do. Check out our signs for our first problem. We've got a positive times a negative. Those are different signs, which means my answer must be negative. And now that I've established that, I can just think of, hey, 3 times 2 is 6. My answer must be negative 6. In the next example, I've got two negatives. We've got a negative 4 and a negative 4. So my answer has to be positive because those are the same sign. So once again, even though they're negative, the sign is the same, and therefore my answer will be positive. And 4 times 4 is 16. So this will be 16. All right, take a look at the next problem. Negative 10 times 4. We've got a negative times a positive. Those things are different. Therefore, my answer will be negative. So I'll put the negative sign there already, and I know that 10 times 4 is 40. So this will give me negative 40. Last but not least, I've got the same sign for 8 times 3. Those are both positive. So since those are the same, my answer is definitely going to be positive. And 8 times 3 is 24. That's just my answer. I don't even have to worry about negatives. They were never introduced in that problem. Let's take a look at the division side. Again, the same rules apply for multiplication and division. So for my first example, I've got a positive divided by a positive. My answer has to be positive because those are the same signs. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Bam, that one was pretty easy. For the next problem, I've got two different signs. I've got negative 12 divided by positive 2. Those are different. And therefore, our answer is going to be negative. So I know my answer will be negative. And since I already know that 12 divided by 2 is 6, my answer here, my quotient, will be negative 6. All right, in the next problem, I've got a negative 16 divided by a negative 4. Those are the same, so even though they're both negative, my answer is going to be positive. And it's always a confusing one, right? Because we feel like those two negatives should make our answer negative, but in reality, they're the same sign, so our answer is going to be positive. 16 divided by 4 is 4, so I can just leave my answer as a positive 4. And our final problem of our foldable is 100, which is positive, divided by negative 10, which is negative. Those are different, and therefore our sign will be negative. So I'm looking at 100 divided by 10, which I know is 10, but since my signs were different, it's a negative 10. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have completed your whole foldable.